put Luminion in play, which you never really loved. That one Weird Ear V, that's a card that both of these players have in their list. Is that something that's going to be important for this matchup in the mirror?
I would reckon it is, because Weird Ear is the one way both of these players have to one-shot an opposing Lugia V-Star. I'm not seeing any choice builds of sort, so the only way you can deal that big hit is through Weird Ear V. However, it does require a lot.
We are getting underway. Alexander with the starts that Weird Ear we were just speaking of, and attach pass. One of the worst things you can do as a Lugia V-Star player. Alexander just had nothing to work with, and Charlie right away gets a much better start, benching a Lugia V, playing a Nest Ball, probably going to eye up that ever-powerful Snorlax.
As a Lugia player, you have one job on turn one, bench a Lugia, right? That's the bare minimum you want to accomplish, and Alexander just not able to do that. The combination of cards in his hand not allowing that, but Charlie off to a pretty good start, double Snorlax, plus the Lugia. You know your Lugia is also not threatened. Sometimes you have to bench two in order to protect and make sure that if one gets KO'd, you won't be punished by having the other one, but very confidently.
Oh, look at this hand.
Oh, wow. Triple research.
3 research going down, and this Jet Energy from Charlie is a play he's able to make because he knows there's no threat of this Lugia going down. Just free to get this Pokemon in the active, use Read the Wind, get an Archeops in the discard pile. Super strong start for Charlie. Let's see what Alexander has. Is there at least a supporter card to work with? I think there is. It's just an Iono, though.
Yeah, and Iono, of course, a very powerful card individually, but when you need a bunch of cards to set up, and at the bare minimum, you're looking for a Lugia here, sometimes the Iono can be underwhelming, even though it's 6 cards. And something interesting we're seeing from both players, actually, is a 3-3 Lugia V-Star line instead of the 4-3, which that does reduce your chance of starting a Lugia.
It does.
A little bit, right? Or maybe a lot. So that can lead to situations where you whiff, such as we saw in that first turn.
That's kind of become the norm in these colorless Lugia builds. Of course, the single strike builds that we've seen through most of the season, 4-3 was absolutely the standard, and pretty much no one ever went below that. But this colorless build, I think players have felt a little bit more comfortable going down to the thinner Lugia line, mostly because of Snorlax. You don't have to get 2 Archeops in play in order to attack on turn 2. That's been one of my favorite parts of playing with this deck, is just turn 1 attaching an energy to Snorlax, turn 2 finding one more, of course one of them being a double turbo, and you can start swinging right away.
And now Charlie in a perfect spot here, has a couple Ultra Balls, flips heads on capturing Aroma to find that second Arceus, which is fantastic. And now a big problem Alexander has is that we're speaking of how you need to bench 2 Lugias in case of a threat. Now this Lugia V-Star is very likely to knock out this Lugia V, and then how do you set up? What do you
Charlie's
even do?
going
There's
for
the
it
boss's
right
orders.
away, and this could be a situation where the game just gets out of hand. Charlie's jumped so far ahead, it seems pretty unlikely that Alexander can find a path back into this. He's not going to concede just yet, play another couple turns. This is definitely a matchup that I don't feel like we're going to see going to time too often, so maybe stick it out for one more turn, see if you can find something, but it is not looking ideal.
Yeah, Charlie just taking a knockout, and by there being no Lugia in play, barely any energy in play, you know at the very least, if you're Charlie, you're going to be 3 prizes ahead before Alexander even threatens with anything. And as mentioned, nothing one-shots the Lugia V-Star outside of that Weird Ear, so you might not see any sort of big response before Charlie's down to 2 prizes left at this point.
Alexander does have Luminion V in the hand. This Luminous Sign ability can be utilized in order to search the deck now for any supporter card. I have to imagine Professor's Research is going to be the choice. You need to fill your hand up. You need to find more resources. Getting down 2 Lugia would be excellent. You could maybe take a little bit of a risk and bench just 1 Lugia because you know your opponent had to use Luminion V on the last turn to get the boss's orders. They didn't just have it naturally in the hand. And now with a full bench, Charlie does theoretically have less access to the card, so maybe that has to be the calculated risk. And speaking of calculated risks, Alexander thinking he needs to go for Iono to have a chance in this one.
Indeed, really putting a lot of value in the cards he has in his hand, which are Energy, Lugia V-Star, and another Snorlax. And you do attack your opponent's hand, as you mentioned, with Iono, but that prior knowledge that they had to search for a boss, they didn't have on their hand. Maybe they got one of the prizes, but if they didn't, now they're much closer to getting another boss's orders. And no Lugia, it seems, in the hand. Has to go for it with the Ultra Ball.
Has to go for the Ultra Ball. One thing definitely still missing, though, for Alexander. We have yet to see an Archeops hit the discard pile. One of the key pieces of this deck is getting 2 Archeops down so you can use that Summoning Star to bring them back. Charlie was able to execute it perfectly. Alexander is really struggling to keep up. Does go for this Ultra Ball, finds the Lugia V, places it directly onto the bench, has an energy to attach as well, can put the gift energy maybe on the active, give yourself a chance to draw a few more cards. The V-Guard energy actually is smart as well. That protects against the boss's orders, so really heads-up play there from Alexander. And now we're over to Charlie, who has the Collapse Stadium, gets rid of that Luminion, can be a liability and easy 2 prizes for your opponent later on in the game. Wants to deny Alexander any chance of getting back into this one. Does play an Ultra Ball as well, ditching a Lugia V-Star and that Professor Burnett, able to search the deck for any Pokemon, putting it to the hand. Looks like it will be the Luminion V, which of course the bench is full thanks to the Collapse Stadium in play, but if Charlie attacks with the Tempest Dive this turn, he can discard the Collapse Stadium, and then we'll have the ability to use Luminous Sign on the next turn, and does have a boss's orders to get 2 prizes this turn.
The raw boss's orders, and by having that Luminion in hand, basically sets up the win by having the knockout on the Luminion the next turn. So Alexander will require another Iono, which he is holding in his hand, but Iono is not very conducive to accomplishing your other goal with the deck. Outside of benching Lugia turn 1, you need to discard double Archeops. We see 0 Archeops in the discard pile so far, though. This Iono is going to be, it's going to have to be one of the best Ionos in the history of Ionos.
Without a doubt. It's basically got to find Ultra Ball, 2 Archeops, Ultra Ball to get the Lugia V-Star. Let's see what Alexander can piece together. That Iono being played right away. Happy to shuffle that Luminion into the deck. Charlie now with just 2 cards to work with this coming turn. Alexander on the draw. Let's see what he finds. There is the Lugia V-Star, but I don't see an Archeops.
And we see the concession indeed. Now, if you're watching at home, you might think, okay, Charlie had the boss's orders twice at the right time. Something interesting to note is that he is playing 4 boss's orders, therefore maximizing the chances of having the boss's orders at the right time, which is very, very key. I think that's definitely something that colorless Lugia has an advantage over single strike. It does have a little bit of more space to play with, doesn't need to run those urns, has a wide range of attackers, and therefore can fit those 4 copies of boss's orders to make sure that you have it at the right time. And just like we've seen something like Lost Box not deal with Charizard EX, now we see Charlie just hunting down those 220 HP Pokemon and winning that way.
And Charlie just was able to jump way too far ahead, way too quickly. A dominant win there for Charlie Kerr with his Lugia V-Star deck. Alexander hoping for a lot better setup in this game. Needs to find a Lugia V, hopefully get a couple of Archeops down in the discard pile, and he'll see if he can fight back and tie this series up 1-1 and send it, force a game 3.
Indeed. Now, I do like that concession. I feel like
Alex is already shaking his head.
Oh no, did not get to see what Pokemon he started. And now we see the double Arceus prize for Alexander, which can sometimes be impactful. Sometimes you're grateful if you manage to get the 2 Arceus out immediately, then those 2 cards are definitely completely useless. But 3 energies prized as well could also be problematic.
Alex does unfortunately start the Luminion V. Totally makes sense why he was shaking his head at that opening hand, but at least this time does get a Nest Ball, and this will get the Lugia V. Like you mentioned in Game 1, Pablo, this is absolutely the bare minimum.
Indeed, you have 2 goals as a Lugia player. Turn 1, Lugia V and as many Archeops in the discard pile as you can, and then on turn 2, get the Lugia V-Star and bring those Archeops from the discard pile. So far so good. That Luminion start is less than ideal, but will manage. And of course, going first, you do have a small advantage. Just because you get to evolve first, you get to be the aggressor first. And based on Alexander's hand, he didn't prize the other Luminion. He does have access to Professor Burnett, so he's 1 coin flip away from being able to do what his deck wants to do every single time.
Looks like it's going to be a pretty solid start here for Charlie Kerr. Does flip a Tails on this Capturing Aroma. That means he'll have to get a basic Pokemon, but I think he's got another one waiting in the hand. Would love to see a Heads here, which he does find. This can get the second Archeops, as he already has one in the hand. And you know what accompanies the pair of Archeops? It's going to be an Ultra Ball.
Of course it is. Now, that Ultra Ball, once again, since Charlie is going second, now there is a threat that the Lugia could go down in this upcoming turn to Alexander's own Lugia V-Star. So unless we see a V-Guard energy attached to the active Lugia V, we do need to find a second copy of Lugia to ensure that you are safe. However, if you have the V-Guard, you can definitely bank on your opponent not running Choice Build. It's a card that's not seeing any play so far in Lugia V-Star decks.
Using this Ultra Ball, Charlie is able to find the second Lugia V. I do believe he has a V-Guard energy in the hand, so that's a way that he can make it much more difficult for Alexander to score a KO this turn. If he can attach to the active, he will be able to use Read the Wind, discarding the third Archeops. Oh, wait, sorry, Pablo, this turn is not over. There was a Professor's Research waiting in the hand as well. Let's see what Charlie can work with off this fresh set of 7 cards. I have to say, though, there's really not much else he wants.
Indeed, just missing the key piece of Lugia V-Star, also being one coin flip away off of that Mesagoza. So not bad there. And I like this second Lugia V being down with the V-Guard energy. You are pretty safe. However, this is being extra, ultra, hyper safe.
Draw for turn over on Alexander's end. Does find a double turbo energy, and this could be a big flip. The Mesagoza does hit a Tails. It's going to once again be up to an Iono here for Alexander to stay in this game, or at least keep up the pace, keep up the tempo.
Indeed, and now the only way you actually are able to sort of keep up with Charlie is if that Iono draws you exactly 2 Archeops or ways to find Archeops plus an Ultra Ball to discard them. Alexander is holding the Lugia V-Star. Sometimes even the Read the Wind can help you get there, but now if he doesn't set up here his double Archeops, he's lost the advantage that he had by choosing to go first.
He can still use this Jet energy to put the Lugia V in the active. Is debating between attaching that and a double turbo energy. Does have the V-Star in the hand. A couple ways you could think about this. If you jet the Lugia to the active and evolve, you know that your opponent is going to have a harder time to take 2 prizes next turn. But if you put the double turbo, you kind of are willing to give up the Luminion. And also, you don't have to evolve the Lugia V-Star. I think that's the debate going through Alexander's mind right now.
But yeah, but if you don't evolve, then you definitely need to find another Lugia V, and that's not guaranteed. So
I mean, if you need to find an Ultra Ball already, right,
yeah,
off the
true.
Iono, you give yourself a chance to read the wind at least.
Indeed.
Drawing 6 cards, there's a Capturing Aroma, and I do not see an Ultra Ball.
We do see the Burnett, but that cannot be played this turn. So this Lugia V-Star in the active is potentially safe. I don't think there's ever a universe where you can get enough energy for Weird Year V to get the KO, but at least, we'll be able to set up next turn unless Charlie uses an Iono himself.
Capturing Aroma did flip heads, and that's actually a kind of key tech card in Alexander's list that we see him bringing to the front right away. It is that Luxray from Paldea Evolved, a card Charlie is not utilizing in his list. Kind of a card I think Alexander would like to surprise Charlie with, but flipping heads on this Capturing Aroma means he just has to add it to the hand right now. That is absolutely a way that Alexander could get back into this game. Thanks to that Swelling Flash ability, if he has more prize cards remaining than Charlie does, he'll be able to put it into play immediately. And then through the power of the Reversal Energy, he could actually use Wild Charge for just 1 energy attachment.
And now you could ask, well, why not just grab an Archeops? Number 1, Alexander has 2 Archeops prized, and therefore, if he grabs an Archeops, then he's no longer able to discard them through Professor Burnett. Yeah. So, unfortunate reveal of the Luxray there, but you definitely want that option, especially if Charlie aggressively goes after the
big flip
Luminion.
It is a Tails. Charlie does not have a Lugia V-Star just yet, so that Mesagoza could have gotten him there. And now he kind of has a awkward hand to work with, a bunch of energy cards and a research. Has to debate if it's worth losing all these cards, and it probably is to keep up the pace, and ditches that Radiant Charizard as well. That's a big card to see hit the discard pile.
Indeed, so both players revealing their techs of sorts, which neither did reveal in Game 1. Now they are seeing what they should potentially expect from their opponents in Game 3 if we do get there. But so far, Charlie with the initiative here, being able to power up, being able to take that first KO, and even remove the Mesagoza, which is a research that Alexander could use to find the right attacker next turn.
Archeops being put into play through that Summoning Star, V-Star power, a pair of special energy cards now being brought out of the deck with Primal Turbo, and Lugia V-Star is ready to make the first move. It will not be a knockout this game, and I also wonder if Alexander would have kind of liked for Charlie to find the knockout on, say, the Luminion, so that Luxray play would have been available. We know it is not at this point, But this is Alexander finding a way to kind of stay in this game. This Lugia V-Star eats up a hit. Draw for turn is an Ultra Ball, which is not too bad. And now this Burnett can get a couple of Archeops into the discard pile. What do you think you'd like to see from Alexander here in this position, Pablo?
Ideally, you would like to see Sharon's Kerr, but obviously that's not going to happen.
What would you like to see that Alexander plays in his list?
Yeah, so get the Archeops, try to pressure a little bit with the Snorlax, but honestly, I would prefer to see a boss KO on an Archeops, which once again you cannot do because of the Professor Burnett, but like somehow taking a single prize and then playing the Luxray, because damaging this Lugia V-Star, you just get knocked out right back, and then the Luxray is not as efficient, right? You want to use Luxray to one KO something that's clean. This turn is almost like a lost turn if you just attack into a Lugia V-Star.
Alexander does have an option with Ultra Ball in hand to find a different attacker potentially. Could he go after, say, a Snorlax and retreat this active Lugia V-Star?
Definitely could. It is an option that could work out a little bit, but it's once again the Luxray. If you're using Luxray to just attack into a Lugia, it's just less efficient. You would love to have that clean 1-for-2 price trade-off with the Luxray against a clean Lugia. There is another Lugia on the bench, I guess. So back-to-back Snorlaxes leading into a Luxray KO could also be important. We'll have to see how this ends up working out. The Weirdeer, interesting option potentially as well, but I don't think we have enough energy to 1KO Lugia V-Star.
Yeah, all 4 double turbo energy adds up to 240, so you'd need, I guess if Alexander had a jet energy in hand, it actually would have been possible, but that was not available. It will just have to be the Snorlax grabbed, and the Archeops now being utilized, able to fetch a couple of energy out of the deck. Therapeutic energy could be grabbed. Feels like kind of an awkward spot. The therapeutic energy is pretty strong, obviously, in order to, make it so that every single...
I thought there was a V-Guard on. Oh, it's a jet.
Yeah, it looks like there's a discussion about the energy attachment. So, yeah, should be more damage in play. Okay, we're just getting things sorted out. But as I was saying, for Alexander, almost feels like an awkward use of the therapeutic energy because you kind of do expect the Snorlax to be knocked out, right?
Indeed. So maybe a gift could be a better choice there since Alexander doesn't have a ton of cards in their hand. So therapeutic, of course, wakes up the Snorlax, but if the Snorlax is going to go down next turn guaranteed, then no need to make sure it stays awake, right? The therapeutic is so important in other matchups like maybe Gardevoir, definitely Lost Bugs. Not as important here. And speaking of energy management, I do think that's one very important skill to have with Lugia V-Star decks, and I'm genuinely surprised we saw this Jet Energy attached here. As the Radiant Charizard has already been discarded, I feel like a Luminous Energy would be better utilized there, and conserving those Jet Energies, especially if you want to do a big Weirdeer V play later down the line.
Yeah, Jet still has value, and Luminous has little to none. Alexander actually deciding to just stick with this Lugia V-Star in the active, is willing to let it go down, willing to go into that Luxray play. The problem is that the thing that Luxray is strongest against, right, is the Lugia. Yep. And if it's already damaged, it can be knocked out by just about anything. Does make things a little awkward with the prize map. We'll see how it develops, though. It could be nice to knock out a second Lugia V-Star, though, if that is a route Charlie decides to go. Charlie here using Primal Turbo to grab a couple of energy, matching Alexander's Snorlax on the other side, a double turbo and therapeutic now being grabbed. Could we see Charlie go for the retreat and attack with the Snorlax this turn?
I think both players want to be very careful, like where and how they go down in prizes. We're just going to see the knockout here. I guess you can use this Snorlax to knock out the Lugia, and then you can use the Luxray to knock out this. And that is one way you can make up for this price deficit that you're about to be in. I think the big card we're hoping to see, if you're either player, honestly, is Collapse Stadium. I think Collapse Stadium would help Alexander get rid of this Luminion and would allow Charlie to get rid of either of these two Pokemon to make sure that you're forcing your opponent to go through Snorlaxes.
Alexander does promote the Snorlax, wisely choosing that as opposed to the Archeops. You don't want to retreat the energy out of play for no reason. Keeping energy in play is just really nice because it can lead to a strong Weirdeer later on in the game. Of course, Alexander did get to fill the hand up to 7 cards before promoting or drawing for turn, thanks to the gift energy that was attacked into from the Lugia V-Star. And now Capturing Aroma will be played. A flip of the coin, a Tails is the result. This yields a basic Pokemon. And with the Luxray in hand, and I do believe also a Collapsed Stadium, we could see exactly what you mentioned with that Lumineon going to the discard pile.
Indeed. I think if you're Alexander, you're we're seeing the weirder. I feel like I would rather see the Snorlax here and just make sure that we get rid of this Luminion and make sure that Charlie cannot get to prizes no matter what next turn. We saw Charlie very aggressively go Boss's Orders back to back in the previous game. You might suspect they're playing a higher count. We do have the Collapse Stadium in hand? No, I don't think we do. It's a Misagosa.
I must be missing it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I had seen it. I suppose maybe it's that Lugia V-Star. There's quite a few gold cards in Alexander's deck. Makes them a little more difficult to identify. As it stands, this Snorlax will be able to KO this Lugia V-Star. That will tie up the prize trade. Alexander debating if anything else is worth benching in this spot. Could put the Luxray into play, but maybe wanting to save that, not putting it down until you know it's going to be safe, or you know you're going to use it, right? If he put it into play right now, Charlie could theoretically Boss's Orders and KO it.
Definitely, that is an option. I myself would have liked a more aggressive approach, bench the Luxray, bench the other Snorlax, research away your hand, and try to find that Collapse Stadium to get rid of the Lumina. I feel like that Lumina is going to be one of the key things to decide this game potentially in Charlie's favor, but let's not count anyone out yet.
No energies put into play as well from Alexander. No Primal Turbos utilized on that previous turn. Charlie pretty quickly promoting the Snorlax, ready to match Alexander's KO on this turn. The players are tied in prizes, though Charlie is the one who initiated this prize trade, and will get back ahead this turn almost definitely. Taking a quick look at Alexander's discard pile. You always see great players doing this, just taking stock of what resources the opponent has utilized so that you can make the best and most informed plays moving forward. We do see the second gift energy now being attached from the hand to that benched Lugia V-Star. And debating a card to play here. It is a Nest Ball, which will bring another basic Pokemon out of the deck into play.
I think something interesting that we could see is Alexander might have held the hand because he already has a Luxray, already has the Boss's Orders to chase down this Lugia V-Star. And sometimes by not doing anything during your turn, that's a sign of weakness, right? So maybe by not going for that research, you're giving a false sense of security to your opponent. We do see the KO, and I feel like this is the turn we're definitely going to see the Luxray Boss KO.
Yeah, if Alexander has all of those pieces, is the Boss's Orders already in the hand? It is, so he can make that happen. Boom, Luxray puts down right away. Primal Turbo can find this reversal energy, and this is the way Alexander gets back into this game. This is going to be huge. Probably why he decided to hold on to the hand, because he knew he already had the Boss's Orders. It was a bit of a risk. Charlie could have found an Iono, but as it stands, it's going to pay off.
Now, this is really big. You get a KO on this Lugia. But how do you get your last two prizes? Charlie does have this stout Weird Year in play. I'm thinking pre-rotation.
Yes, Lugia of old.
So I guess you want to use your own Weird Year in order to accomplish that. You are running lower on energy. The Weird is in play, but we do see a benched Lugia V, which is fine, right? Now that Charlie is at uneven prices.
Yes, sure.
The Luminion was already there, so might as well get a Lugia, which is a little sturdier, especially with that V-Guard. And maybe
something
that's
safer to hide energy cards
Indeed.
on so that you can build up to the Weird Year later on. Totally makes sense. Something Charlie could do, he actually does play 3 Snorlax. That's something I really actually like in Lugia. So he could theoretically fill his bench with another Snorlax and then try to dig for the collapsed stadium to take that Weird Year out of play, get rid of that 2-prize potential liability, and try to close the game out with just a flurry of Snorlax swinging at the opponent. Alexander now sending up that Luxray. Such a strong ability, being able to put a Stage 2 Pokemon directly into play, and due to the lightning weakness, Wild Charge takes the KO, and Alexander, for the first time this series, is able to jump ahead. Charlie promoting the Snorlax, drawing for turn, has a ton of cards in hand to work with, though I don't know, based on his face, if he has the pieces he really wants.
At this point, there's no way for you to win the game as Charlie. One big thing is there's no gift energy on the active Pokemon. So if you can piece an Iono here, that could be really, really good, because even finding and establishing a Lugia V-Star could be difficult. And if you also safeguard your Weird Year, if you have a V-Guard energy available still, then that puts it out of range of your opponent's Lugia V-Star, right? So you get that extra turn potentially to just find a boss to finish off the game on that Luminion.
And it will be that Iono being played, both players shuffling their hands, placing them on the bottom of the deck. Charlie draws 3, Alexander 2, of course the prize count as it stands. Now Charlie able to use Primal Turbo, can pull a couple of those energy cards out of the deck. There were a ton of them in the hand previously. Try to prep for a potential Weirdeer to close out the game. Just loading energy up onto this Snorlax seems totally fine. Of course, the active already powered up thanks to the double turbo energy, and that will easily be able to deal with this Luxray.
No V-Guard energy available for Charlie, though. That's already been discarded. So if there was a universe where Alexander could get Lugia V-Star and a Boss's Orders, that would indeed be game. But with no preemptively attached gift energy on the Luxray, we have a double turbo on a Neswell to utilize this turn, which is not really impressive.
Yes, not too much to work with in this hand. Right now for Alexander, the Nest Ball could get another Snorlax, right? So that at least can piece together an attacker. Double turbo energy, of course, being attached for the turn. But then you're just having to hope that your opponent doesn't have Boss's Orders, which honestly is entirely possible. Charlie, by playing the Iono, not only limited Alexander's hand, limited his own hand. And just like Alexander, Charlie does not have a gift energy on his current active Pokemon. And how about that draw for turn as well for Alexander? It is the Snorlax.
Indeed. So I think Lugia is similar to Miraida in the sense that it starts off very aggressively, but then you start running out of energies. Where you attach those gifts and when you attach them is also very key to make sure that you protect yourself from Iono.
We could see the Mew EX come into play here. You've already got Lumineon. It's a liability, right? You could put down the Mew EX off the Nest Ball and play your hand down enough to go for the restart. Try to dig a little bit more. See if you can find the pieces. And the way that Alexander's hand is playing out, I think he would actually be able to draw a full 3 cards from restart.
Yeah, for sure. He has an energy to attach, has Snorlax to bench, so Mew EX definitely a very good option, right? Those 3 extra cards, you're looking for Boss plus V-Star if you have enough energies to make sure that you can attack, and you do. Yeah, there are 2 Jet energies left. We are seeing them. Seems to be eyeing every basic Pokemon, though. No Mew, no restart ability.
It does choose to just get the other Snorlax. You already have one in hand, so I think the Mew coming down would be really nice. You could attack with, worst case scenario, if you do miss, you have the other Snorlax in hand that you can attack with this turn. And then next turn, you know, Charlie just needs to take 1 prize, so you don't care if you're attacking with a 2 prize Pokemon.
Indeed. So, yeah, that restart would have been super, super strong. Mew also has that free retreat.
Yes.
It gives you play, right? In case your Snorlax goes down, you can promote that. Probably pull off on a restart. So yeah, the Mew EX would have been such a good card to get here, especially with that top deck Snorlax. You have the Snorlax play anyways.
Yes, Alexander does play the full hand out. A pair of Snorlax already set up. Will retreat this Lugia to the bench. And now Snorlax coming active will KO the opposing Lax on Charlie's end. Alexander going down to just 1 prize card remaining. Charlie Kerr draws for the turn. Does have the Ultra Ball. Does that Ultra Ball lead to a Lumineon for the boss for the game? He's going to check the deck first with this Primal Turbo. I see the boss in there. Is there the Lumineon? And indeed, it is available. That can search out the boss's orders, which can bring up the Lumineon V on Alexander's side. And Charlie Kerr is going to win this set 2-0 in the Lugia V-Star Mirror.
Okay, Alexander just making sure to see what Luminous Energy
It's
does.
just a colorless energy.
Yep.
It doesn't, even though there's other special energy, it still counts as at least a colorless. It's not like it gets no effect at all. Just wanted to double check, make sure, and Charlie Kerr does come away victorious.
Those 4 Boss's Orders, I think, coming in clutch, yeah?
Absolutely.
He was able to search for some with Lumineon, but just having them raw in your hand can be so impactful and so, so important. We did see the Luxray from Alexander put in work, but it just wasn't enough because of that missed turn 2 Lugia V-Star. If Alexander had been able to attack on that first turn before Charlie, since he went first, then we might have seen a different result here.
And Alexander started 11-1 in this tournament, lost the last round to Sawyer Melvin, lost this round to Charlie Kerr, and now finds himself at 33 match points. He's going to have to win this final round 15 if he wants to make it into top 8. Fun fact from Alexander as well. This is actually his first regional championship, so I think that's a pretty incredible start thus far. Even if you don't get this last win, he should definitely hold his head high with the finish. We'll see if he can pull it off, as this is a recap of how this game just really got out of hand here in game number 1 for Charlie. Just got way too far ahead. Alexander really didn't have the setup to deal with what Charlie was able to do.
Indeed, we did see a very dominating performance by Charlie in game 1. Game 2 was a lot closer, really back and forth. Both players had the possibility to win the game, and I wish Alexander had been a little more aggressive with his Mew EX.
Yeah, it would have been nice to at least give yourself a chance
Yep.
to draw the cards needed, even if it is a very slim chance. That's what the best players do. They find those 1% lines, and if that is their only win condition, they go for it.
Yeah.
Alexander not able to find the pieces. Does at least tie the prize trade up here in game number 2. Like you mentioned, this game was so much closer, and it really did come down to the wire. Alexander with just 1 prize remaining at the end of things. Charlie was able to initiate the prize trade overall, but did have to take the odd prize on the Snorlax, and that's what let kind of Alexander get back in this game. The fact that he could have theoretically gone 2 prizes, and then 2 prizes for his knockouts.
I think a big thing as well is that we are about to see that KO on the Lugia V-Star that had 2 gift energies attached. If those gift energies had been spread around more evenly across other Pokemon, we might have seen Charlie not have to rely on a 4-card hand after Iono.
And Charlie, I think, had a lot of energy cards in his hand.
Indeed.
Which, you know, I think that's why that therapeutic energy didn't get grabbed out the turn you mentioned it. It was actually just, or not the therapeutic, the luminous, of course.
Yeah.
And Charlie does find the boss's orders with the Lumineon. Snorlax able to bring it up and take this knockout with the thumping Snore. Alexander just making sure, yeah, what's this one do again? Okay, yeah, I lose.
Yeah, just a colorless energy, and when all your Pokemon are colorless, that's going to be good enough. We didn't see the Radiant Charizard in action, but I'm fairly certain Charlie must have used it throughout the tournament, right? It's such a good card.
It's not super strong, I feel like, in this matchup. Like, it's fine, but you already have Snorlax as 1 prizers, which are pretty strong. Really strong against things like Miraidon. I think that makes that matchup pretty reasonable for you to actually be able to win, maybe even just straight up 50-50, to be honest, because they can just come in at the end and clean up a 2-prize KO pretty easily. Charlie, though, his fun fact for us coming into this round, so we're in what, round 14?
14.
He said he has played against 11 Lost Box decks. 11!
What?
It makes sense why he's doing so well, right?
Yeah.
So that is definitely a matchup. I mean, as a Lost Box player, can you imagine trying to get through 3 Snorlax? Oh my goodness.
Mission impossible right there. 3 Snorlax, which you can only damage with Cramorant or your V attackers, and you like Kyogre into them. It's so inefficient. Yeah, Snorlax is such a good card against Lost Box. It's an insurmountable Pokemon for Lost Box.
Yeah, for a while, I remember last season people were playing Snorlax in their Lugia lists, but it was before Therapeutic Energy or Jet Energy came out. And as a Lost Box player, I didn't really ever mind when they attacked with Snorlax. That thing stayed asleep, and I just played with their bench with the Sableye, right?
Yeah, you're like, I can't attack you with Sableye? Sure, I'll just attack everyone else once you take a nap.
But now it gets a huge boost with the release of Jet Energy and then more recently Therapeutic. I mean, just makes a massive difference. And that's one of my favorite things about the Pokemon TCG just in general as well, is whenever we have old cards that were always solid, but new cards come out that breathe new life into them.
I mean, that was exactly Lugia V-Star before